In 20 days, we'll be coming up on the 21st anniversary of the September 11, 2001 attacks. And what have we achieved so far in holding people responsible for either complicity or malfeasance or even foreknowledge? Nothing. The 9/11 Truth Movement isn't going to forward any type of new evidence regarding any evidence supporting their inane claims, such as living hijackers and no planes and CGI planes and other ridiculous theories. And people like Richard Gage and Barbara Honegger and Jason Burmis and David Ray Griffin and Judy Wood and others over the years have propagated these silly theories, which basically caused embarrassment and shame to the 9/11 community in the eyes of the public. And this is really a tremendous problem because of that, there are people out there like myself and DJ Thermal Detonator and Ryan Dawson and other people that are trying to further information that can be used in a court of law, but we're generally ignored by the general public because we don't want to be associated with the 9/11 Truth Movement because of the embarrassment that they brought with them over the last 20 years. And, this is a real problem because as we pass every year from the date of the terrorist incident of September 11th, we are 1 year removed and 1 year removed from the public discourse because things like COVID and potential war with China, Iran, and Russia are basically now permeated within the consciousness of the American public. And what we're trying to present to the public is information, which is an overload of information that wasn't generally shared with the public for the previous 20 years and or just ignored altogether. Thanks in due part to the people I mentioned that propagated these silly theories of the 9/11 Truth Movement on behalf of them. But there is information out there that we could use. And if there's any lawyers out there that think that there's a case to be brought against like the CIA, for example, or the NSA, or even Saudi and Israeli foreign intelligence about monitoring these operatives who were involved with the September 11th attacks, and that information wasn't shared, which allowed the attacks to be successful. That's a case, in my view. Now, a couple of videos I'm going to play here today are basically from the Joint House Inquiry. Now, I've repeated ad nauseum where this meeting that I'm going to be playing between the Director of Central Intelligence, George Tenet, and one particular panelist on Joint Inquiry, Carl Levin, where Carl Levin is actually the only person who has really touched on the area where we could show that the CIA intentionally withheld information from the Department of Justice, from the Department of State about Al-Qaeda operatives inside the United States and even abroad that were coming to the United States that were involved with terrorist incidents, which would mean that the FBI would have jurisdiction at the CIA. Was that the reason why the CIA didn't tell the FBI or the Department of State about these Al-Qaeda operatives coming to the United States? Well, what does that mean about the Saudis and Israelis who are monitoring these people with their own espionage rings? What were they doing? And why aren't we asking these questions? Because the 9/11 Truth Movement doesn't believe in hijackers. If you don't believe in hijackers, that means all these operations I'm talking about don't exist. 21 years, and we're still in the 9/11 Truth Movement. They're still talking about living hijackers and no plane crashes at the Pentagon or Shanksville. And if you don't have any of these things, you don't have much to talk about. And this is the reason why the 9/11 Truth Movement is a failure in its own right, because of the simple fact that they are propagating these theories. And it's hurting real information from reaching people in the legal avenues that can bring a case. Now, Lawyers Committee for 9/11 Inquiry, they're not going anywhere. And I hate to break the bubble to you, Mick Garrison, but you're not going anywhere. Not with people like Richard Gage and Barbara Honegger at the board of directors because they don't believe in hijackers or hijacked planes. If you're just going to talk about World Trade Center 1, 2, and 7, you're looking at a small view of 9/11, and you don't have any suspects. If you're going to say that it came down by controlled demolition, fine. I'm with you there. Give me somebody, anybody. If you're going to court with no names and just on the science alone, well, get ready for a backlash of competing people in the scientific community who claim that the World Trade Center didn't come down for controlled demolition. So that means you would have to have a backup case, insurance, because just in case that case fails, well, I can give you a surefire way of bringing about a case against the CIA with these videos I'm going to play you today. And one such video is about a cable that came into Alex Station. Alex Station was a code name for the Bin Laden Issue Station, which was a virtual station by the Central Intelligence Agency constructed in 1996 by David Cohen, head of the Counterterrorism Center. And they had other agencies working along the CIA in compiling information about Osama bin Laden and Al-Qaeda around the world. And what they didn't do was share information with each other, which caused a lot of friction within Alex Station. And one cable that came in was about two men, Khalid al-Mihdhar and Wafa Hazmi. These men were living in Yemen at the time, living in an Al-Qaeda communications house that was monitored by the CIA and the NSA for years prior to 9/11, listening to the phone calls, listening to voices in the house. They overheard a phone call about one subject named Khalid. His name is Walid bin Atash, and he's an Al-Qaeda lieutenant meant to coordinate attacks, fundraise attacks, give money, and act as a facilitator. And he's talking to Khalid al-Mihdhar about going to a meeting in Malaysia in January 5th of 2000. And it was a 3-day meeting of all the top terrorism leaders in the world in Malaysia. People from Jaish, Jemaah Islamiyah, which is a group located in Indonesia that was bombing Christian churches and attacking the tourism industry, kidnapping people, killing people, bombing homes and government sensitive targets. They were affiliated with Abu Sayyaf, which is basically another Salafist militant group, that is affiliated with Osama bin Laden and Al-Qaeda, and even before that with Ramzi Youssef, who was a part of Al-Qaeda. Now, I'm not going to talk about that. Now, this cable that came in was about Khalid al-Mihdhar and Wafa Hazmi leaving the meeting, coming to the United States. They both had U.S. visas. And that cable came in. It was read by the FBI. It was read by the CIA. But listen to what Director Tennant had to say about this cable.
March 5th, the CIA learns that Hazmi had actually entered the United States on January 15th, 7 days after leaving the Al-Qaeda meeting in Malaysia. So now the CIA knows Hazmi is in the United States, but the CIA still doesn't put Hazmi or Mihdhar on the watch list, and still does not notify the FBI about a very critical fact. A known Al-Qaeda operative, we're at war with Al-Qaeda, a known Al-Qaeda operative got into the United States. My question is, do you know specifically why the FBI was not notified of that critical fact at that time?
The cable that came in from the field at the time, sir, was labeled information only, and I know that nobody read that cable.
But my question is, do you know why the FBI was not notified of the fact that an Al-Qaeda operative now was known in March of the year 2000 to have entered the United States? Why was the CIA, why did the CIA not specifically notify the CIA? That's my question. The FBI.
Sir, if we weren't aware of it, when it came in the headquarters, we couldn't have notified them. Nobody read that cable in March, in the March time frame.
So that the cable that said that Hazmi had entered the United States came to your headquarters, nobody read it?
Yes, sir, it was an information-only cable from the field, and nobody read that information-only cable.
Should it have been read?
Yes, of course, in hindsight.
And should it have been read at the time?
Of course it should have been read.
All right, my question is, do you know who should have read it?
I don't know that, sir.
Okay, now, one, why isn't the 9/11 Truth Movement talking about this? One, they probably don't even know this exists. Two, because they don't believe in hijackers. So if they don't believe in hijackers or hijacked planes, how could they talk about or bring forth to a legal avenue information that they don't even believe in? Okay, this is the reason why it's another failure in its own right. Right now, we have here, is George Tenet lying? Well, if that, he's committing perjury to the Joint House inquiry. Now, that's out of the statute of limitations because, this took place in 2003. That's 19 years ago, and nobody's talking about this. Why? Over 50 agents read that cable. Did George Tenet read that cable? We don't know. But if he read the cable, he's lying. But there were other people that read that cable. One person read the cable was Doug Miller of the FBI. Another person who read that cable was Michelle Ann Casey, who is the lead ticket of the Yemen hub monitoring of the CIA's monitoring of the Yemen hub. Tom Wilshire, the deputy chief of Alex Station, he read the cable. And God knows who else. So according to Lawrence Wright, who wrote The Looming Tower, he notices that over 50 agents read that cable. But Tenet basically here is lying. So here we have a crime. Crime that could have been pinpointed by real research and investigators way back when. But nobody did. Nobody brought that to attention. But why isn't this in the public discourse? Why isn't this to the national media or even independent media if you don't care for the legacy media? Nobody's talking about this. Why isn't nobody bringing this to attention? Except for the more serious researchers. If that isn't enough, I'm going to play another video for you. And this is about a meeting that took place in 2001. Now, this meeting involved a CIA analyst that Carl Levin can't name because at the time he was not publicly known, but we know him as Clark Shannon, who is part of the counterterrorism unit at the CIA. He's meeting with an FBI agent who also is being protected, and his name is Steve Bongard out of Washington, D.C. This is July of 2001, June and July of 2001, where Clark Shannon has those photographs that were taken at this Malaysia summit meeting in 2000 of Khalid al-Mihdhar and Nawaf al-Hazmi, showing him Steve Bongard. Hey, who are these guys? Well, Steve Bongard doesn't know. And asks Clark Shannon, who is he? He can't say. In a later meeting in July of 2001, he comes back. Steve Bongard says, you're going to tell us who they are? He says, yeah, it's Khalid al-Mihdhar. Why are you following him? I can't tell you that. George Tenet, who we're going to see in this video right now, basically says, I never told him that. So that means either Clark Shannon or George Tenet is lying. Well, of course, it's George Tenet. Why would Clark Shannon lie? He'd be fired for bringing false information before the joint inquiry. Lying, basically. Why did George Tenet tell Clark Shannon not to tell the FBI? Why? Why isn't the 9/11 Truth Movement all over it? Here.
Now we have a meeting in the year 2002 in New York City. And this is a meeting of a CIA analyst and FBI officials from the New York field office, which was the office investigating the Cole bombing and the FBI headquarters, including the FBI analyst on detail to the counterterrorist center at the CIA. The FBI agents on the Cole bombing pressed the CIA at that meeting for information regarding Mihdhar and the Malaysia meeting, but the CIA representative denied them that information. It's a very specific finding in the staff report that there was a refusal to share that information relative to Mihdhar and Malaysia and as to why the CIA was tracking Mihdhar at a June 2001 meeting on a specific request of an FBI agent in New York. My question is, do you know why that CIA agent refused to tell the CIA agent what the FBI, what the CIA, let me start over. Do you know why the CIA agent refused to tell the FBI agent what the CIA agent knew when the FBI agent specifically said, why are you tracking Midhar?
We have, we're going to have a disagreement on the facts here.
Of course.
And here are the facts as I understand them. There were 3 people who left New York to go to Washington to go to New York that day. It was an FBI analyst from FBI headquarters, an FBI analyst from our counterterrorism center, and our analyst. They went up to discuss the Cole investigation. The FBI analyst from FBI headquarters brought the surveillance photos with her. And at the end of the conversation, and I've now talked to 2 of the people involved, Senator, the FBI analyst from FBI headquarters handed the surveillance photos to the New York field office personnel. There was some discussion about them. Indeed, they were talking about different people. Midhar was not who they were talking about in this meeting. When I asked our person at this meeting
That has nothing to do
as
with
to whether he was specifically asked about Midhar and Hazmi, he has no recollection of the subject ever being directed to him or ever coming up. So there's a factual issue here, and I've only talked to 2 of the people involved.
Let me read you the staff report. The CIA analyst who attended the New York meeting acknowledged to the Joint Inquiry staff that he had seen the information regarding al-Midhar's U.S. visa and al-Hazmi's travel to the United States, but he stated that he would not share information outside of the CIA unless he had authority to do so. That's what he told our staff. Do you disagree with that?
Sir, I've talked to him as well.
Do you disagree that he said that to our staff?
Well, no, I don't disagree. He said it to your staff. I'm telling you what
Did he
told
tell
me.
you something differently?
Yes, sir. He
Okay.
gave me a different
So
perspective.
he told
on the meeting.
you and he told our staff something differently.
Well,
okay.
but I think it's
Yeah.
important, sir.
Yeah, but our time is limited, so let me just keep going. That's the answer. He told you something differently from what he told our staff. Mr. Mueller, Director Mueller, at that June 11th meeting, did the FBI know that Midhar and Hazmi were at the January 2000 meeting of al-Qaeda operatives in Malaysia?
I don't believe they did.
All right. So we still don't know in June of 2001 what the CIA has known for 15 months. Now,
There you go. I mean, do you need anything after that? Why wasn't the information shared? Why did Director Tennant tell Clark Shannon not to share that information? You would think the 9/11 truth would be all over. This is involving the CIA, or first of all, involving information that wasn't shared that could have prevented at least 9/11 from happening. On this occasion, regarding Khalid al-Midhar and Nawaf al-Hazmi. Now, if the FBI were aware al-Qaeda operatives coming to the United States, you would think that, the FBI would be aware nationwide, but not in this case. And, I could show you videos all day long regarding what Tenet basically didn't share and what he basically lied to the joint inquiry. But like I said, the 9/11 Truth Movement is not going to be talking about this. Hardly anyone will. And that means that the media won't inform about it, independent or legacy, and the consciousness, the general discourse nationwide. We should be talking about this, and it's not. And with each passing year, as we go past 9/11 on 2001, we're going to be probably 9/11 will be all but forgotten, just like JFK. And yes, every once in a while, the anniversary will bring up, kindling memories, and, did you know a third building fell? And all this ridiculous sloganeers that will be chanting in ground zero by certain people who are not touching this subject. They won't even go near it because it's too complex for them. And that's coming from their own mouths. 9/11 is too complex. Can you simplify it? That's what I was told once. And I wish I could. I wish I could simplify 9/11 in 5 to 10 minutes, but I can't. If you're going to go in the streets and yell about to some tourist who doesn't know World Trade Center 7 about, did you know a third building fell? Well, yeah, that's a great segue, but what do you do afterwards? You give them a flyer and refer them to a work of people that you can't talk about with any authority on your own? Well, then what good are you? You're just a messenger. You're just a cheerleader. You're not there to inform or to educate people. You're giving them a very narrow view of 9/11. And the other areas you won't touch, or you're just terribly misinformed, because the majority of you, if you're watching this video, most of you don't even believe hijackers hijack planes. So what good are you? Imagine going to ground zero and saying that. They're going to look at you just like the public views the 9/11 Truth Movement as a whole, with disrespect and embarrassment. So we're just 20 days away. And let's just see what kind of discourse is happening between now and then.